I'm Corley Phillips. I'm chairman of Sierra Forward, and I'm going to be moderating the Q&A portion of this. So there's a Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. If you got a question you'd like to submit, put it into that chat box that's for Q&A. And that way I can look for sort of themes that people are asking and try to make sure we're hitting the majority of what people wanted to hear about. Um, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Les Francis, who's the executive director of Sierra Ford, to introduce our guest. Take it away, Les.
Thanks, Corley. First of all, let me just welcome everybody. Sierra Ford, as you know, is a nonpartisan political action committee operating up here in the northern and northeastern and eastern parts of California, about 24 counties. It is a real honor for us to have Zoe Lofgren on this webinar today. And it's a personal honor for me because we were chatting before we came on. Zoe and I have known each other like forever when we were both staffers on Capitol Hill. She for the late great Don Edwards and me for the late great Norm Mineta. And Zoe was one of those who helped me learn the ropes of Capitol Hill. And so we've been friends ever since and have worked together on any number of things. Zoe has been a distinguished member of Congress now for 30 years. She previously served on the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors and before that on the San Jose City College Board. She is steeped in public policy and knows the intersection of policy and politics as well as anybody around. Her boss and mentor, Don Edwards, was probably one of the finest members of Congress ever, and so she had terrific learning experiences and example experiences from Don. Zoe has had now national prominence as a member of the Judiciary Committee and the Oversight Committee, but also as a manager of the first Trump impeachment during his first term, and as a member of the January 6th Special Committee that investigated that horrible episode in our history. She's now helping lead the effort on behalf of Prop 50. And I'll let her explain the proposition and why. Sarah Forward endorsed it right away. We're full in on this campaign. And Joe's going to explain the issue and then answer questions that you might have about that or anything else. So let me just turn it over to our good friend Zoe Lofgren.
Well, thank you so much, Les, and it's lovely that you've invited me here. We go back a long ways, and we honor the institutions of our government that are sometimes not being honored by others. Now, I'll start by saying if you'd asked me 2 months ago if I thought California was going to redraw our congressional maps mid-decade, I would have told you probably not. But we're in really unprecedented times. I was actually contacted by someone in the spring saying, well, could you like redraw the maps? And we have a data guy, Paul Mitchell, and I called Pete Aguilar, our caucus chair and delegation member. We called Paul and said, could this happen? He said, nah, that will never work. Da 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 da. So I sort of discounted it. But as the months went by, Trump called the governor of Texas and said he deserved 5 seats, 5 Republican seats, and wanted them to do gerrymandering to do that. And we thought that was wrong. But we like our commission in California. I mean, the none of us wanted to change our district. So the first thing we thought was, well, if we were able to draw 5 seats for Democrats, take away from the Republicans in California, maybe the Republicans would back off in Texas. And that was our first goal. Get them to back off this gerrymander, and let's just fight. Let's just have a fight about the issues on in the redistricting in the midterms next year. Well, that didn't happen. And so what we thought would just be a bluff, we started thinking about, could this really happen? And we went to our data guy and we said, take a look. Could we really pick up 5 seats and still comply with the Voting Rights Act? Now, this same data guy who had earlier on the fly said that wouldn't happen, when he looked at it, he said, actually, you could do that. You could take 5 Republican seats, comply with the Voting Rights Act, and that's when we became serious. Now, why would Trump be trying to do these gerrymander rigging of elections? It's because what they've done is hugely unpopular. They've stripped health care from millions of Americans. They've stripped food assistance from millions of Americans. Their tariff policy has jumped up the price of everything. Have you been to the grocery store recently? I mean, take a look at the price of meat and vegetables. It's outrageous. And they know that if they have to run with fairly on their policies, they're going to lose. And that's why they're taking a look at rigging the elections, not only in Texas, but in Missouri, Indiana, Florida, Ohio. They want to make sure that we can't fairly compete. Now, as that became clear, chairing the California Democratic delegation, we had a discussion. And we said, in the face of this, we can do nothing or we can do something. And we decided we should do something. And that something is to void what Texas has done. And so we started map making. Our goal was to take 5 Republican seats to match what Texas had done, but also to comply with the Voting Rights Act and to try and keep cities and counties together because that's a principle of redistricting. And then also not to do it ourselves, but to go to the voters because the voters approved the redistricting commission. And any change they would have to buy into. And so we worked with our friends in the legislature to put together quickly, but in an open process, what these maps would be. They're actually better in terms of a Voting Rights Act component than what the maps that the commission did. The other thing that we were very clear about, since we never wanted to eliminate the commission maps, was that this would be an emergency response to what Trump was doing. So we would go back after the next census to the regular order that the commission would then draw the maps as they have in the past. That's what is going before the voters, March 4th, Proposition 50. And I do think it's important that we vote yes. You know, California has been punished by the Trump administration. Millions of Americans are going to, and Californians are going to lose their health care because of the policies he's insisted on. One of the things that I'm just shocked by, it's hard to get a flood control project through the Army Corps of Engineers. In my district, in the Pajaro area of Watsonville and near Salinas, we had big floods. We never could get flood control. We finally got the Army Corps to put flood control projects in. The Trump administration has wiped out all the flood control projects in California because we're a blue state. They've defunded ag programs that keep food in the food banks and also for children. So Californians have been punished by the Trump administration, and the way to strike back is to take power away from them. We can't take power away from them if they've rigged the election, and we can't have a fair fight in the for the midterms next year. So that's what this is all about. I think that voters are looking at this. They know that it's not something that we wanted to do. It's not a fight that we picked, but compared to just accepting the rollover by the Trump administration and the Republicans, we thought it was important to let Californians have a choice on whether they want to stand up to the trauma that's been inflicted upon them. And that's what Prop 50 is about.
Great. Well, that's a great overview. I appreciate it, Zoe. There's been several questions sort of swirling around how to advocate for this. As people are talking to other voters and campaigning, hopefully, what are the winning arguments? Is contrasting what we're doing with Texas a winning argument, or are there others that are more powerful?
Well, I think the main thing is that this is a reaction to what Trump is doing in red states. And it's not just Texas. It's Missouri, it's Indiana, it's Ohio, it's Florida. And they're trying to make sure that their unpopular policies are not put to the test in the midterms. So I think talking about Trump trying to rig the election, and this is a counter to that. It's true, but it's also an important component of winning support in California. This is how we fight back against Trump. And that is, it's the truth, and people resonate to that. That's why, as we look at the polling and the massive phone banking and walking, people are going to their corners. The MAGA right is opposed. All the Democrats are in favor. The non-MAGA Republicans are very open to it because they know we're in trouble. California's in trouble because of what they've done to us. And this is a way to fight back.
Go ahead, Les.
So just one question. Actually, a couple of questions. We're what 6 weeks away from the actual election, but we're a couple of weeks away from ballots going out. So people are going to be voting soon. So the question is, how do we attach urgency to this? But the other is, you've mentioned the Voting Rights Act a couple of times. I think it's important for people to understand what it is about the Voting Rights Act that we want to keep intact, that we are trying to
Right.
protect here. So,
Well, let me just say this. In Texas, I mean, the Voting Rights Act was established in 65
right,
to allow for formerly discriminated against primarily African Americans, but now extended to Hispanics, not to be gerrymandered so that their voices could not be heard. And there's a whole body of law on that. In Texas, what they did was that they took the minority districts and they fractured them. I met with some of the Texas legislators who came to California. This is the most segregated map since the 60s, since prior to the Voting Rights Act. I mean, it's outrageous. We didn't do that. We said, okay, let's make an opportunity. I mean, for example, my district, it's a voting, I'm not Hispanic, but it's an opportunity for voters to elect someone who will stand up for them. I'm a former immigration law professor. I'm a former immigration lawyer. I'm a former chair of the immigration subcommittee. I understand the nuances of immigration law, and I know when we send out armed agents with masks who refuse to identify themselves, who are snatching people off the street without probable cause and disappearing them to some hellhole in Louisiana, that's our problem, right? So even though I'm not a Latina, my Hispanic constituents understand I'm standing up for them. That's the whole point. It's not about, it's about being able to give voice to minority communities to understand that they are being heard and that somebody's standing up for them.
Great.
So Zoe, you mentioned, that Democrats by and large are favoring and MAGA Republicans are not, and the non-MAGA Republicans are open to this. What about other subgroups? How does age affect this? Young people versus people less than my age.
Young people are massively in favor of Proposition 50. So this is a turnout election when it comes to them. Um, the people who are against us, and it's not overwhelming, but slightly against us, are Republican men, um, declined to state men, declined to state women are on our side. Um, I think in the end, this is a turnout election. And since Democratic voters outnumber Republican voters substantially, it's really an issue of who shows up. And that's an issue of why is this important? You know, I don't, this isn't really on the agenda. I was shocked the other day when the FCC threatened the Jimmy Kimmel show. I mean, I don't watch Jimmy Kimmel, but that somebody that that the government would try and censor speech because it's critical of the president. That's the whole point of the First Amendment, that you can be criticizing the president. So we are at a point here where not only is the cost of living driving people crazy and what Trump is doing with tariffs and immigration enforcement with farm workers and the like, but there's a real threat to our freedom. And I think people get that. And here's our chance to stand up for freedom.
So when Texas first announced their redistricting plan, there were people that were saying, this could backfire on Texas. And an example that was in the election to fill Matt Gaetz' seat,
Mhm.
the margin of winning it was still elected a Republican,
Right.
but by much smaller margins than it had in the past. And that kind of indicated that the electorate is maybe getting a little fed up. Is it possible this will backfire on Texas? Because to do a redistricting, by definition, you're going to take Republicans out of a safe district and move them into one that's not safe, and that could backfire.
Well, we'll see. Um, that's true in California as well. When we looked at for real, I mean, the first thing we tried to do was to head fake Texas. It's like, okay, if we do this, um, you won't gain 5 seats. Maybe they'll back off. Of course, they didn't back off. Um, when we looked at it, if you want to make more Democratic seats, what that means is the adjacent Democratic incumbents have to become less safe. And that's not something that incumbents always want to do. But as we went through talking to our Democratic delegation, everybody was on board. And you know why? It's not about us. It's about the country. It's about the future of our country. And if it makes it harder for us to run, so be it. We have to save our country. Texas assumes that uh, especially the seats along the Texas-Mexico border that voted for Trump are going to vote for Republicans. And it's not at all clear that that's the case. What We had an out of control situation at the border. I chastised privately the Biden administration to take steps. They didn't take my advice. But now that the surge at the border has disappeared and it's been replaced by, you know, masked agents disappearing people, including US citizens, on the basis of race. That's not selling well in border communities. And so their theory that communities that voted for Trump because of Biden's failure at the border are going to stick with Republicans, not necessarily the case. I'll say this about our map. I mean, we have 3 districts that will for sure be Democratic districts if Proposition 50 is passed, 2 that could be Democratic districts, but they're competitive. We're into competition. We think we can win those seats, and we're happy to put the Republican policies before the voting public and let them make a decision.
Yeah, Les, go ahead.
2 points. One of those possible flips is up here in the foothills. It's Kevin Kiley's seat,
Right.
which could be very competitive. So we're particularly eager about, and Lamalfa too. I mean,
Yeah.
those are 2 possible wins. Um, the I had a question that one of our attendees asked, how were the maps here drawn? What was the process, and who sort of was in the line drawing?
It was the House Democratic delegation from California, but it was really a data nerd. We turned to a data nerd and said, how could we do 5 Republican seats consistent with the Voting Rights Act? And so it was Paul Mitchell, it's not, it's been in
Yeah,
the paper. He started doing scenarios. Um,
he's very good, by the
he's
way. I mean,
very
he's really
good.
very good.
And he's very committed. I mean, he's not only a good data guy, but he's very committed to democratic principles, including the Voting Rights Act, and also keeping cities and counties together to the maximum extent possible. It's interesting that what we ended up with uh, keeps more cities and counties together than the commission map that we currently have, and has one additional Voting Rights Act that the commission map didn't have. So in a lot of ways, our map is better than their map. And 2 of the commissioners have stepped forward to support what we're doing. Um, you know, I went through, since I chair the delegation, and whenever you change a district, everybody's upset. Um, so I went through with House members. Could you do this? Could you do that? People had views, but in the end, it was not about us. It was about the people. I'll tell you, my own district would be changed. The commission changed my district so that it wasn't just Silicon Valley, it was also the Salinas Valley and San Benito County and Watsonville. That was new to me, but actually it's been lovely. I love those people. I've had such a wonderful time learning from them about their needs and standing up for them. This map would put me down into Coalinga and Avenal, right? That would be new. But okay, I can do that. I called the sheriff of Fresno County to say, look, do whatever you want on the vote, but if I end up in Coalinga, you're going to have my cell phone and we'll be on speed dial. I'm going to stand up for you. So it's an exciting time for us who are in elected office to learn and step up and stand up for new communities.
So this kind of got started because the Trump administration
Right.
had their data guy run the scenario and say, "Hey, we can pick up 5 seats by redrawing these lines," right?
Right.
Um, with the problem with the level of computing power we have now is you can pretty much do anything you want. You have some really odd looking districts, but and hopefully the Voting Rights Act constrains you, but it's quite possible to as they came up with, carve out 5 more Republican seats. Um, how much of that process is influenced by, oh, but we really, need to, beef up this one, or, I have to complain, I guess, a little. Sierra Forward was formed after the 2016 election, and our objective was to get rid of Tom McClintock. And he's still there, and he's got a safe district again. So how does how much influence is like, okay, we're just not going to go after that, for instance?
Well, if you're going to create new Democratic possible districts, you need to put Republican voters someplace. And so McClintock becomes safer. Jay Obernolte becomes safer. Kim down in Orange County becomes safer. And the Bakersfield seat becomes safer. So there would be 4 Republican seats in California. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't lose. I mean, we've had people tell us that they're going to vote, especially against Kim, thinking that she's really out of step with her district. I'm not from Orange County, so I don't know if that's viable or not. But, there were some maps that were online showing that we eliminated every single Republican. You couldn't do that consistent with the Voting Rights Act. And I also think if we tried to do that and we went to our voters, because this has to be approved by California voters, they have to be comfortable with what we're proposing. They would never approve that.
There have been a few special elections. I mentioned the Matt Gaetz seat, which was encouraging, even if it stayed in Republican hands by the fact that the margin changed so much.
Right.
There was a election for Iowa State Senate that I was
Right.
following because Caitlin Dray, that was Moms for Iowa, I believe, went up against a full-on MAGA Republican in a pretty MAGA state and won that. Are these boding well for
Yes.
the midterms? And
Yes.
presumably, if we prevail with Prop 50, that would be another data point that says
Yes.
that
I mean,
it's
the
looking good.
Democrats have won almost all of the special elections and off general elections, whether it's school board, state office, judicial elections. I mean, it's almost a sweep and it's not even close. But I take nothing for granted. I mean, there's a billionaire spending a lot of money against Prop 50. We're going to be outspent. I understand that. But we're not going to be outworked. And we will be competitive financially. And I think really it's up to the voters. But if we make our case about the harm that's been done to California and the opportunity to stand up to that and change it, I think we're going to win.
So there's another data point on the calendar, and that's the deadline on the spending bill, uh, and how that goes could influence the voters here because it'll happen just before ballots go in the mail.
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that and why that's such a huge fight and so important? Because it does relate to this.
It does. I mean, the continuing resolution that they seek to extend, we all voted against because it cuts health care. It punishes people. It cuts research, science research, cancer research. And so we've come out, I mean, the Republicans didn't even talk to us, and they own it, right? They own the White House, the Senate, and the House. So we said this, we're not going to vote to cut health care to Americans. Here's our proposal. Make the tax credits for the Affordable Care Act permanent and reverse the Medicaid cuts that are going to put hospitals, they're going to close 17 hospitals in rural California and more in urban centers. Reverse those cuts and you got a deal. So we'll see what they say to that.
How have the regional Republicans been countering Prop 50? That Charlie Munger Jr. has been spending a lot of money on it, but among the elected officials, how are they countering it, and what are the oppositional tactics there?
Well, it's mainly Munger and other billionaire money. Um, the Republicans, this is about keeping control for them. So they're putting big bucks into it. Um, Kylie, who never said one thing about fair elections until his own district could be changed and challenging for him, is now, decrying um, the whole matter. I think many of them are poo-pooing this. They think that um, somehow they will win because the billionaires are going to put money in on their side. We'll see. I mean, we are fielding, starting last weekend, thousands and thousands of people walking precincts. They can't do that. They don't have that.
And that's being the is the Democratic Party's doing that, or who's the force behind that?
Some of it's the Democratic Party, some of it's civil societies, some of it's unions, some of it's members of Congress just texting everybody who supports us saying, show up. When you add it all together, it's quite a bit.
Les, did you have your hand up?
No, no,
Oh,
sorry.
okay. So in well, a lot of these people on this call are activists. So what's your advice to them about how best to get involved to try to make sure this passes?
We can put in the
Okay,
chat, and I think Ellen is the chair, the staff, our delegation can put things in the chat. People have an opportunity to phone bank, and there's organized phone banking, and it's distributed, and that's one thing they can do. They can walk precincts, and we're going to actually put a list out of where precincts are being walked, and it's a turnout election. So we're calling, it's not a persuasion for the most part election, calling people and showing up at people's doorsteps saying, you got to vote. This is about the future of our democracy. It's about getting the crazy tariff regime undone. It's about controlling the cost of living. So that's another thing. You want to spend $5, you can send it to and help us fund this whole thing.
I may sound like a dinosaur here, Zoe, but up here, there's an old-fashioned campaign tactic that still works, and that's yard signs, out small outdoor signs.
I love
Um,
yard signs. I believe in yard signs.
will we have those access to those?
I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out. I mean, one thing about yard signs is that number one, the person who puts a yard sign up is going to show up, right? You wouldn't put the
Exactly.
yard sign there if you didn't actually plan to vote and vote in the way. And it also tells your neighbors where you are, and it's important. I'm a big believer in lawn signs.
Right.
I'll find out, Les. I don't know the
Uh,
answer.
Terrific. Thank you.
Um, we talked offline before we started this, but you indicated that right now polling is looking favorable for this to pass. And
Correct.
usually the problem is it's easier to vote no, right? That's the default position for a lot of voters. So how do you change that?
Well, I think the vote no when you're confused tends to happen when you have multiple ballot measures. A voter looks at something, it's like, oh my God, all this stuff, and you can't figure it out, and it's too confusing. You just, if you don't know, you don't vote. This is the only thing on the ballot in most counties. There's a few exceptions. Santa Clara County is going for a sales tax increase. Um, to make up for the Medicaid cuts, which is now polling at 80%, interestingly enough. Uh,
Wow.
but for most counties, most voters, the only thing on the ballot will be this. And if they're confused, they probably just won't vote.
Uh, Another question on a related topic. You and Senator Padilla have opened another front on this
Right.
battle. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
We had a great press conference today. The Redistricting Reform Act. This is a bill I've introduced every Congress since 2005, so it's not new. I really believe in independent redistricting for every state, and that's what this bill would do. When Democrats had the majority, we had the biggest reform effort ever in HR 1, and part of that was independent redistricting. That passed the House. By the way, not a single Republican voted for it. And it was crushed by the Republicans in a filibuster in the Senate. So basically, we're going back to what we've been trying to do for 20 years, get independent redistricting in every state. That's the best way forward. We never expected or wanted to be in the redistricting wars. That's what Trump initiated. Um, we were um, reluctant participants in this. We thought we could bluff them, back them down, make them stop. Well, we failed. So now we have to fight back. We have to fight back. We can't let them roll over us. But in the
This,
end, we need to have independent redistricting for so many reasons. Part of the problem of polarization in the House is that the right wingers, all they need to do is appeal to the MAGA base, and then it's over. If you had fair districts, they'd have to care about everybody. So this is part of healing. Pardon me, healing our divisions.
By the way, on
this,
the yard sign question, a bunch of people posted that the El Dorado County Dems have yard signs available, and other Democratic groups and indivisible groups are doing it as well. So there are sources, available on what yard signs. This is an interesting question, which is apparently Governor Schwarzenegger was originally not aligned, but has come out pretty strongly against Prop 50. Any
Right.
comment on that?
Well, we knew he would. Um, he was a proponent of the commission. Excuse me. And we're not opposed to the commission. That's why we go back to the commission after the next census. This is a response to an emergency situation created by Donald Trump. I wish that Governor Schwarzenegger had not taken that position, but we have other political leaders who are probably more important to Californians, like Barack Obama, who have a different point of view, who will be heard from.
Another group that has been neutral on this, the League of Women Voters, is neutral on Prop 50. A lot of people look to them. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, interestingly enough, I know the current president. I've known her for years, and she made some statements that were quoted by Charlie Munger and his mailers. I was speaking to the League of Women Voters in San Jose, not for this reason. It had been long planned, I mean, for months. And I chastised Gloria, saying, look, I mean, you're being promoted as an opponent. And she said, well, we haven't taken a position. I said, well, you're being, used as an opponent. And I have a lot of friends in the league, and I read to them what Common Cause decided. And Common Cause said, they're for redistricting by independent commissions, but in this situation where you've got an authoritarian trying to take over the government, you can't just ignore that. And they had a whole set of reasons why they would not oppose what we were doing. I passed out their statement to members of the league. And when I said that, the women at the event broke into applause. So I think Gloria's views were not actually represented by the membership, and they had a vote and decided to take the same position Common Cause had, which is not to oppose what we're doing.
You mentioned authoritarian governments. Donald Trump signs executive orders on just about everything,
Yep.
whether it's constitutional or not, or whether it's legal or not. Is there some 11th hour tactic that he might invoke if to try to undo a successful vote on Prop 50?
I wouldn't put anything past him. Um, I think we are alert that they might try and intimidate voters. Um, are they going to put ICE agents in front of polling places in minority communities? I think the governor is aware of the possibility of intimidation. We do have the highway patrol who can protect communities from abuse from masked armed federal agents. So there's nothing more important than a free and fair election, free from intimidation, and we're committed to making that happen.
You mentioned HR1 and the efforts to reform this process for a long time. Just out of curiosity, where has Kevin Kiley been on that issue before?
He's never been a fan. He's never been a supporter.
When
Now
he,
he doesn't have a district he can win, honestly. Um, Harris would have won his seat by 8 points. How he takes his right-wing views and wins that seat, I don't see it. I don't think he sees it either.
yeah,
Well, hence his objection to, commitment to nonpartisan districting, right?
Where was he when North Carolina, a state that's so purple, it's like basically 50-50, and they had a 50-50 congressional delegation. They gerrymandered it, so there's only 3 Democrats left. That's the margin of victory for the Republicans in the House today, that gerrymander.
Which just goes to speak for why we said this when we first announced our support for the Prop 50 effort was that nonpartisan commissions should be the law of the land.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
That's the
But
only way to get back to a more representative democracy. Because
well, and not only is it fair to voters, but it will improve the entire body politic. I mean, if you can take some of my very extreme, not all of the Republicans I serve with are, some of them are friends and they're rational and but they're afraid to speak up. And they're afraid to speak up because of partisan gerrymandering. They'll be taken out by some MAGA nutcase. If you have
yeah.
fair elections, you have an opportunity for people to actually be part of the body politic.
All right, Les, any final thoughts?
Only that we've got to do whatever we can to get this thing passed. I am fully on board with the notion that there's much more at stake here than people may understand, and it's the future of the American Republic. And we've got to rein Trump in, and he knows it. I mean, this is a carefully orchestrated effort on their part, and it requires similar efforts on our part.
I would just say this, Les, you're right, but it's not just about curbing Trump by taking the House and having some checks and balances. It's also about the next presidential election.
Yeah, yeah,
Liz Cheney and I worked on a reform of the Electoral Count Act. The stupid Senate did some dumb stuff, but we did do. But do you think the Republicans will actually abide by the law if they are running the show after the next election? I don't think a Democrat elected president will actually be seated by the Republicans if they're in charge. So this is really this is the whole ball game for our democracy.
Hard to believe we're at this point.
It is, but here we are.
Yep. Well, thank you so very much for spending time with us and educating us and motivating us. It's a pleasure to have you and an honor to have you.
Everything you can do is important. Thank you so much.
All right, well, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks again, Zoe. This has been wonderful, and we will make the recording of this available to people who have registered. So we have to get it converted first, but so it won't come out immediately, but soon.
Good, and share it with my staff. I'd love to have it.
Absolutely.
Thanks a million. It's late
Perfect.
here, but not late where you are.
No, not yet. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Much love.